This is officially my first episode, and just in time for spring cleaning. My first topic is exactly about that: clutter and organization. So, if you've ever looked around your space and thought, how did it ever get this bad? Well, you're not alone. That's definitely happened to me. It affects anyone, ADHD or not, and I kind of want to talk a little bit about that and offer some insights, my journey with it. Some of the key points are: if you have ADHD, you probably know about executive functions. If you don't have ADHD, this will be good to know. Some of the 6 clusters that I've come across in a book recently are activation, focus, effort, emotion, memory, and action. Now, I don't believe all of these are going to tie into today's topic, but I do believe a good amount of them do, and some of them commingle within each other. So, activation goes into organizing, prioritizing, and activating to work. The focus is exactly as it sounds. It's focus, sustaining, and shifting attention to tasks. So prioritization of tasks, getting tasks done, starting the tasks. Not effort, regulating alertness, sustaining effort, and processing speed. Emotion. This is a huge one that I'm currently struggling with. You'll find out about all this later on in future episodes. Stay tuned. Managing frustration and modulating emotions. Number 5 is memory. So utilizing working memory and accessing recall. And number 6 is action, monitoring, and self-regulating action. And yes, I do have notes because I have bad memory. I have terrible recall. And this episode will probably take multiple takes and a lot of editing to make it seem somewhat professional. I don't know. My goal is to be able to read as much as I can, learn as much as I can about ADHD and how it affects me and other people. And I want to provide value for, well, first of all, myself. I want to better myself, and I want to provide value to anyone out there who is struggling with the same things that I do. So, some other key points that I have made notes of are object permanence. Now, if you don't know what that means, it's okay. I have 6 simple words to make it very simple to understand. Out of sight, out of mind. Now this really affects me so much. I can't tell you how many times I've had to redo laundry because I put my clothes in the washer and then I forget about it because it's in a whole nother room with a door that I don't enter, and it stays in there sometimes for days, sometimes for more than enough time for my clothes to have a raunchy stench to them. And just the other day, that exact thing happened. I put my clothes in to wash, and then I realized, oh shoot, I have laundry. Anyways, I'm going off on a little tangent there, but yes, object permanence, out of sight, out of mind, a very big deal with people with ADHD. And so, also decision paralysis. If there's too many choices, then nothing gets done, really, because it becomes so overwhelming. It becomes very stressful to have all these thoughts running around your mind and trying to prioritize things. And it's like, oh man, do I do this one first? Oh, but then this one also needs to be done. And then, oh, but this I started this one the other day and I want to finish it, but I haven't finished it, and but this needs to be started because it's important. But then this one's also important, and it's like, man, all these things that need to be done. So yes, decision paralysis is definitely a important factor in the lives of many with ADHD. Yes, decision paralysis, too many choices equals nothing gets done. Very overwhelming, too stimulating, and that is something that can tie into clutter. If you have a lot of clutter, you have a lot of spaces that you feel need to be worked on, and then it's like, oh man, I want this, but I also want this to be cleaned, and I need to organize this. It starts to become overwhelming, and nothing gets done. And yes, I feel you all out there. So there's a book that I have to turn to every now and then for little things, and it's called The Little Book of Life Skills by Eric Zamet Ruddy. There is a section where he goes over organization. And he starts off with a quote that I really like. When you start to declutter a space, the problem is that you focus on the stuff. But it's not about the stuff, it's about you. This is a quote by Peter Walsh, and I found it in the book, The Little Book of Life Skills by Eric Zamet Ruddy. I really like that quote. It talks about a deeper meaning of self. It talks about a deeper meaning of understanding of what you want for yourself and how you can get what you want out of the space that you have by thinking about, not the stuff, but you as a person. I have provided some helpful tips that I want to share with anyone out there, and I hope anyone can go and take these and utilize these, and it helps them. So the first thing I have is make things visible and easy access. Do you remember that point earlier where I talked about out of sight, out of mind? If you have things right in front of you, it makes it so much easier to evaluate your surroundings and realize, oh, this needs to be done, or hey, this could use some cleaning. That's just my little tidbit, and I will actually be moving into a couple of the tips that I found in the little book of life skills. And I did not include all of his tips in here, just the ones that I found really applied, like that I would like to implement into my own life, that I would like to apply to myself and my spaces. The first step one, is you have to ask yourself, what's the vision I have for the life that I want? Again, you have to ask yourself, what's the vision I have for the life that I want? Now, if you've ever read Atomic Habits, there is a section in there that talks about environment. I actually have some examples that I will go into a little bit later regarding that topic. Step 2, and I really enjoy this one. This one is like my bread and butter. Look at the space you're decluttering and the items you are considering and ask, does this thing help me create the life that I want, or does it distract me and detract me from the life that I want? I'm looking back at some of the spaces that I've been in. If you want to read more, are you gonna stash all your books away in a box and put them in storage? No, you're gonna have some books that you want to read. You're gonna put them on a bookshelf that you see very often, or maybe even on your bedside. What's it called? Bedside. Your bedside table. You can see this book and you can say to yourself, man, I'm gonna read. You have to make that choice to actually indulge in the things that you want based off of your environment. I'll go into my personal experiences a little bit later. I do, after experimenting with this and testing different things, I have found it to be very, very helpful to implement this sort of mindset into my own life. And so let's go a little more into clutter itself. So there are two main types of clutter. So first of all, we have memory clutter, right? So this reminds you of an important person, achievement, or event. Yeah, my grandpa gave me a pocket knife many, many years ago, and to this day I still have it. And yes, it's I treasure it. I cherish it. Maybe it's a trophy from the high school spelling bee that you were super proud of. And so it's a memory clutter. And then there is, I love this one, the might need it one day clutter. A random piece of lumber, the fondue pot, or your skinny jeans from college. The items that we hold on to for all of these imagined futures that we might have. So I lived with my great grandparents, and my grandma, she has a lot of clutter. She has a lot of items that she finds, a lot of items she collects, she keeps, and when addressed, she said, oh, what if grandpa needs to use it, or what if your brother needs to use it? Sometimes, yes, it's helpful. Okay, and so that's, again, two main types of clutter: the memory clutter and the might need it one day clutter. This is the last step that I'm gonna include from this book, because if everything else in that book is very helpful, and I would highly recommend it. And so the step 4 is, instead of thinking about what you want for a space, so for example curtains, lamps, pillows, think about what you want from a space, right? And again, this ties into environment. So what you want from a space could be comfort, escape, motivation. So again, I really love the entire thought process behind like environment, because it really helps. I'll go into some more examples that I've personally experienced and put into place in my own life. These are some tips he has provided in his little book of life skills. So if you're decluttering a kitchen, take everything out of the utensil drawer and put it in a cardboard box for a month. Once you use something, put it away in a drawer. At the end of the month, consider donating what's left. And this doesn't include items that are like seldom used, like a turkey basin, something for Thanksgiving, things used for Christmas. And the same thing can be applied to your closet, right? There's a reverse hanger trick where you flip all your hangers around. Once you use the item, flip the hanger back around. Instead of doing this for a month, you do it for 6 months or a year, and all the rest of the stuff that you didn't use that's still turned over gets donated. And again, that doesn't include the special events or special occasion items. So I actually did this closet trick before I moved out. I looked at my closet, I looked at my belongings, and I said, I don't use all of these. What can I take with me? What can I put away? And yes, I did put it away. I donated a lot of it. I donated a lot of shirts, things that I didn't want to keep, like shorts. I donated a lot of my clothes, and I because again, there was just stuff that I didn't wear. There is another tip, is the one-touch rule, which is something that I've actually found to be very, very helpful in my own life. The one-touch rule is basically put everything in its place. I have a dedicated space to reading, and once I am done reading, I will put my book back next to the chair or the recliner. In my case, it's the recliner. It doesn't matter. I'll put my book back next to the recliner, and once I finish that book, I'll put it back on the shelf, and I'll pull a new book and put it next to that chair. I'm sure a lot of you, if a lot of you have parents who are very strict with putting the TV remote on the coffee table, that is another one that I've been accustomed to. Put everything in its place. It won't get lost if it's on the coffee table. If it's on the couch, it'll get stuck in the cushions. And then you'll be scrounging around trying to find it. If you have children, you always tell them to put your toys in the toy box. That is a great example of putting everything in its place. That way you avoid the clutter and avoid this organization and all the stress of dealing with a cluttered living space. So yeah, just putting everything in its place. For me personally, one thing I really like doing is, and it doesn't really tie into putting things in its place. For example, when I go out, I take my keys, I take my wallet, I take some fidget toys. Well, one fidget toy. I take my headphones. What else? Every now and then I'll take my tablet. I take it to a lot of places, restaurants, parks, and I actually, give me 1 second, I actually have a bag for all the things that I have. And so, you know what? Detour. So, wallet. Keys are actually on the counter because I do like leaving my keys in a space, like whether there's a key hanger. So anyways, wallet. Let's dig in here. Fidget toy. I do have lip balm. Anyways, and then what else is in here? Headphones. And then in this big pocket, I have some bone induction headphones that I use for when I'll be social and still have an option to listen to music and stuff. I have some important documents in there. And then I'll take this tablet with me. It fits in there perfectly, and it's just great to have around. And it's great to know that I have this bag and everything gets put in there. And once I grab it, I know that everything important to me is in that bag. So yeah, just I mean, everything has has a place, and put everything in its place. I want to talk about my experiences a little bit, and so I've mentioned I mentioned that I've messed around with my environment. I've lived at different places. I've been at different locations, and I've had different situations in each environment. So when I lived in my own apartment up in Dallas, I had about 7 pairs of shoes, I believe, and they were all in behind my recliner in that little like corner. And so I decided to get a shoe rack, and oh my gosh, the difference that that thing made was immense. I mean, it just first of all, there are different aesthetics of shoe racks out there. So I found one that fit my apartment style perfectly, and it had a little bench so I could sit on it and put my shoes on in the morning, and it was great. And yes, it definitely made a huge difference. The way the apartment worked was, and I did talk about this a little bit. There was the kitchen. You walked in, you get to the kitchen, and go a little further, and then you have the living room. It was a studio apartment, the living room, the bedroom, and everything. Not one room, two separate rooms. But anyways, the kitchen, I had things that I used pretty often out in the kitchen. My rice cooker I used pretty often. My what's it called? My tea kettle I use very often. I drink tea a lot. And everything else that I didn't use as often, I had them in cabinets, drawers. So my blender was up in a cabinet. Um, and actually, from time to time, I did put my rice cooker up in the cabinet. I had my slow cookers up in the cabinet. I had some pots and pans up top. Just make sure that things weren't on the counters because I love to cook and I need that space. I had my snacks out and visible. It helps me remember that I have snacks because snackies, snackies. Yeah. I had mentioned that I like to read, and I had a recliner that I would sit in sometimes in the mornings, and off to the side I had a little side table, a lamp, and a book. The book that I was currently reading. With me, I had a pen as well because I have ADHD and I have to take notes and I have to highlight the important things. But taking notes helped me a lot. I had my desk. I tried as best as I could to keep it organized, but sometimes I'd get something new, I put it on the desk and then forget about it, and then 2 weeks later, I'd go into a deep clean on that desk and make it as little cluttered as possible, and then 2 weeks later, the same thing. But just maintaining the small things, I would put things in their place, but I had no TV, first of all. Well, I did, but I took away the power cable because I found that by having access to it, I would be very distracted and I would rot in front of my TV. By removing my TV, I was able to read in the mornings. Removing access to the TV helped me by having the shoe rack there, it allowed me to have a much cleaner space. And I had a couple of weights underneath one of my little desks so I can see them. So that helped. And again, it's all about environment. And so one of the other places I want to talk about that I've lived in was I actually was in Louisiana for about 2 months. And it was an Airbnb. I had two other roommates, but they were either never home or never outside of their rooms. There was no TV in this Airbnb, which helped me tremendously, to be honest. So what I did was I basically took over the kitchen and the living room, and I had my laptop, my portable like monitors and stuff, and I set up my little like workstation in the living room. And every time I get home from work, I go to the kitchen, cook up a meal, and then get on my laptop and do something that improved a skill of mine or helped me to learn something new, whether it be doing some drone license class certification classes. I actually created a couple of little games, just small little things that I followed tutorials on. Created some 3D models. And so, and again, and a lot of this was because the bedroom was for sleeping or for reading. And the living room, I had it as a space for progressive work. And that ties into instead of thinking of what you want for a space, think about what you want from a space. So from the bedroom, I wanted it only to be used for sleeping and reading before bed. And so I'd put my before I go to bed, I would put my phone to charge in another room. And that allowed me to focus on reading at night and allowed me to focus on sleeping at night. And then in the living room, I had that little workstation because that was where I wanted to be productive and I wanted to learn new things. And so by having that set up in the living room, I was able to achieve that. And then the kitchen is the kitchen. So it just kind of taking note into what do you want from your spaces. Right now, I am staying in Austin. It's a little bit of a different situation because I'm with a friend. I have my computer here. The kitchen's over there. Oh, and there is one big point. Oh my gosh. So in Dallas, the kitchen and living room were separated by a wall. I'd forget I had dishes. I didn't see them. So in Louisiana, their living room, it was an open floor plan. So living room and kitchen were combined into one space, and that allowed me to like look into the kitchen and be like, oh, there's a mess. Let me take the time to clean this, right? And so, and even here in Austin, it's an open floor plan, so the living room and the kitchen are combined into one room, and so I can look over at the kitchen and be like, that's a mess. Let me fix that. And so, and that's one thing that I mentioned earlier, where I briefly mentioned it. It's make things visible and easy access. And by having this open floor plan, oh, it made it a life changer. Like, I cannot stress enough how much like having everything easily accessible and easily what's called visible fits me so much. And if this can help you, by all means, please look for something open because it is a life changer. I asked some friends on their tips. So some of them do have ADHD and some of them don't. One of my friends said, when that ADHD cleaning urge strikes, take full advantage of that. You're in the zone. You're 100% locked in. Another one of my friends gave a couple more tips. So, do a little bit at a time. Yes, maintaining is key. It keeps the clutter at a minimum and doesn't let it build up. Remind yourself it's okay to be all over the place, especially with ADHD. Can't tell you how many times I'm cleaning and I find something that someone gifted to me 3 years ago, and I take a look at it. It's a note, and I start reading it, and then I start looking at the other notes that I find in that area, and I'm like, oh man, I wonder how these people are doing, and I get off in this tangent of thoughts of random crap that doesn't matter and or is not important to the task that I was doing at hand, and it's like, oh, what was I doing? Let me take out the trash. But wait, I was cleaning up my desk. But anyways, yeah. So it's okay to be all over the place. They also mentioned to have little storage slash organization bins, and yeah, I mean, again, and if you have them out as well, keep it visible, keep it easily accessible. That's great. This is a good one. Invite people over. Oh man, nothing will get me cleaning up knowing that people will be coming over and my place is a mess. Yes, have people over, have a party, have some friends over. Oh man, you will get your place clean no matter what. This friend also said routine it with something else. So the example that they gave was that after they watered their plants, they would tidy up a space of theirs immediately afterwards for like 5 minutes, right? They declutter for 5 minutes after they watered their plants, which is a daily thing. Another one of my friends said, remind yourself that my mental health and productivity improve in a clean environment. When I worked in an office, geez, if my space wasn't clean, I wasn't getting anything done. I'd look around, I'd be like, oh, there's a mess. I look around, oh, there's a mess. And my brain would feel overstimulated by everything that's around me because they're my peripheral visions, my peripheral vision, and I just noticed the mess, and it would not help me. And after I cleaned for about 15 minutes, I realized, oh, that's so much better. I believe to have clutter and organization habits that are useful, you need to have visibility, environment, and routine. Small wins are much bigger than the big overhaul wins. Because if you clean up for 5 minutes a day versus waiting a month and then taking 4 or 5 hours to do a deep clean, those small wins build up over time. And here's a big one. Here's a big one to all of you guys out there. You are not lazy or messy. You just have to find a system that works for you. My final thoughts for this are, instead of aiming for perfection, focus on making your space work for you, right? Environment. What's one small change that you can make today? Now, I would love to hear from you guys. What are your biggest struggles with clutter? Please DM me on Instagram. I would love to hear about your guys' journeys, your guys' stories, what you guys find helpful, what you guys struggle with. And next time, I want to talk with a longtime friend of mine about friendships, relationships with ADHD, how to make them longer lasting and meaningful.